listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is December 22nd, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday?
Spencer, I'm here. I am alive, and that's about as much as I can. It's been first of all, I know the solstice was yesterday, so this sounds like stupid to say out loud, but it like instantly became winter in my neck of the woods.
Yes.
It's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit out. There's like snow on the ground, which like I didn't think it was going to snow in my neck of the woods anymore as the climate continues to shift. So there's that, and that's been it's kind of whiplash sort of thing with the weather, and also I was incredibly ill earlier this week. Like just bedridden for a couple days, essentially. Still trying to, somehow just push through and get work stuff done and get guild stuff done and do what I can for the family. But man, I had a rough couple of days this week, which also cut into some of my WoW time. But I'm feeling a bit better. I'm a bit more back to normal the last couple of days. Still not quite there, but man, yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster week for me. But when we last spoke, I was okay, and then I like fell off a cliff for about 4 days.
Oof. Yeah, I'm starting to hear that.
Climbing back out of it, but we're back I've been back to doing like normal stuff the last few days, so we're getting there.
Yeah, it has been quite the week for me as well, as far as wrapping up all of my work stuff before vacation, because the place I work shuts down between the 24th and the 1st, and then reopens again on the 2nd. So don't worry, all of our salaries are calculated for a 51-week year, so it's not as though they're paying us for this period of time. But, however, it is one of those situations where it is nice to have a break. So I've extended that a little bit by taking a few days on either side of that, and tomorrow is technically my last work day, and then I'm off until the 6th, so I will have quite the nice little break, which I'm looking forward to. But it has meant that all of the work that needs to be done needs to be ready for when people go back to work on the 2nd. So I've been doing that. We have a bunch of projects that are shutting down and whatnot that I'm overseeing. So there was lots of organization to do and leave in place before I vanished, which I'm almost done. Tomorrow is the last day people could potentially reach me. But in the meantime, I have been playing a whole bunch of World of Warcraft. I spent a bunch of time doing anniversary event stuff to try and catch up on that, because I hadn't done all of the guest relations things. So I did all of the guest relation stories. I then did all of the chapters that I had missed out on for going around and helping put together the big feast and celebration that takes place, which was pretty cool. I definitely dug the end of that. I still need to do a few other achievements, but I'm getting close to finishing off anniversary event. I learned something I hadn't even figured out yet by doing all of those quests, which is that there's a black market underneath of the fashion stage, which I didn't know was there. And at that black market, there's a vendor who sells a hex cockroach for shaman, as well as a glyph for rogues. So if you're a shaman or a rogue, be sure you go underneath of the stage so you can buy yourself, I assume, a anniversary event only access to these things. They'll probably come back around every year, but you probably won't be able to get them outside of that, and they are bind on pickup, so you won't find them in the auction house. So definitely be sure you're grabbing that if you're a shaman or a rogue. I don't know if you'll ever use them, but certainly something that's worth grabbing. And I started doing Wintervale, because Wintervale's been going on too, and so I got my Grunch, the little pet, which is adorable. Oh my god, it's so like cute looking. It's little abominable snowman with a big old present on his back going around doing stuff. So that's certainly worthwhile doing. If you haven't been participating in Winter's Veil, it's up and about, and you can get the extra buff from it and whatnot. We'll talk about it later in the show, but it's certainly something that should be on your radar. And I will remind people that in Ironforge, and they probably have, I know they have one in Orgrimmar as well, but in Ironforge, you can walk over and talk to the people who run the sleigh ride that's there, and they will take you to where the Grinch is to beat him. You don't need to fly from Ironforge all the way up. You can just talk to those people, and they will put you on a sleigh, and the sleigh will take you there, and it will be substantially faster because of, Wintervale magic that will get you there very quickly. And you can then complete that, although there's no trip back. So you then either hearth or fly back afterwards. It's a one-way, apparently. It's a busy time for the flying season. So
there's only so much magic to be had in the sleigh.
Exactly.
You gotta ration it out.
Yeah, that's how that one works. It'd be nice if there was a return trip, but there's not. So just keep that in mind as far as the Wintervale stuff goes. I did Mythic Plus as well. I was healing Mythic Plus, and I was doing it with this fancy new ring that you get from new content that dropped last week, which I've also been exploring. And man, does it ever make a difference. It is a crazy thing when you get a group of people, because it was all guildies together, and we did 4 keys in a row. And when you get 4 guildies together who are all wearing the ring, and they're all wearing things that sort of like buff each other's ring, it is really neat what that thing can do. It is very powerful. So certainly worthwhile picking up and doing. And there was some drama and stuff about that we will obviously talk about later in the show, as far as like acquisition of things and how to acquire them and item level changes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just we'll handle that as well. But I did dive into the new content on the Isle. It's cool. I like it. It very much feels like a one and done kind of situation at the moment. I expected there to be like a big rollout of additional dailies or quests on Friday, and it was going to be a Tuesday, Friday thing, but there wasn't. It was just like you did it Tuesday, and then you sort of show up and feed your cool little beast some meat every day. And that's like your one thing you have to do, other than like going to do the events if you're still trying to get stuff. So it's
can't forget to feed your beast the meat, dude.
Yeah,
gotta make sure, gotta get that on the list.
Yep. That's on there. So and like you go into the storm area and you're like, oh, maybe there's some dailies here, and you go into the storm area, there's nothing. Like, okay, well, I guess cool. So I'll wait till Tuesday. It feels weird. It felt like there should be more to that, I guess. I'm also like in the back of my mind, like it felt like there should have been more to it, but I'm actually kind of okay with it because it means that my loop didn't get like massively expanded as to what I need to do and should be spending my time doing. So I'm not telling Blizzard, hey, please make all the dailies reset and add a bunch of stuff into this. I'm just saying, hey, this was a surprise. It wasn't what I was expecting, but I'm actually okay with it. This is fine. I think this is the right amount of content for me at the moment. So the loop is already large enough with what I'm doing, and I didn't need them to tack on something that is more than a hit it and finish it once a week kind of chunk of content. So I'm happy with that. I also did some crafting this week because I was doing Mythic Plus, which meant that I was able to craft my helm as well as a ring. So the biggest thing to remember for folks that are still out there doing stuff, as far as like, doing content and wanting to gear their character and trying to progress, you can have more than 2 crafted pieces of gear. You can have the 2 embellished pieces of gear, and then you can craft as many other pieces of gear you want. And with all the caps removed from crests, it's certainly something where you can go, hey, not only did they reduce the cost of crafting a piece, it's now 60 crests as opposed to 90. It's now also a situation where you're able to like acquire crests as much as you kind of want to acquire them for. So you can start looking at your set and going, yeah, I have some gaps here and there. What am I going to do about this? And you can actually start filling those in. So that's where I'm now like 637.5 or something eye level, whatever it is across the board. I have 1 trinket that is not, and it's a Spy Masters, so I'm just not gonna change that trinket. It's gonna sit at its heroic item level and just sit there on my gear. Otherwise, I have 4 crafted pieces, so those are all 636s, but that's why I'm not 639, is because of that situation. So yeah, and we're working on Queen. So I'm very hopeful that going in with the ring now is going to be like a ridiculous difference in prog on this boss. So I'm hoping that we get in tonight and we just like, we can change our heroism timing. We move stuff around a bunch. We just see prog a lot easier. People are sustaining and living longer naturally. Like the biggest issue is people not being hit by mechanics. So as long as everyone's heads up on, hey, don't stand in that will still one-shot you. It doesn't matter what your ring does. Then we're probably doing good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what prog looks like tonight when we get in there. And obviously I'll report back next week as to what's happening with that. What'd you get up to this week?
Nice, man. Yeah, sounds like a pretty busy week. So, I would, like I said, I was pretty ill, man. It kind of hit me Monday night, and by Tuesday, it was bad. I don't know if it's some kind of bug or maybe some kind of mild poisoning or something, but we're talking like, chills and aches and all that. So, but I ended up not like technically missing work. I still like worked through all this. This is a personality disorder, I think, that I have probably, but like it wasn't time for me to be gone. There was stuff I need to wrap up before the end of the year. It was flexible enough where it's like, okay, I can kind of rest and take care of myself and come back and get some stuff done. Same thing kind of applied to raid, dude. I still ran raid Tuesday and Wednesday and keys after raid, but I didn't do anything else. It's that kind of thing where like, all right, the team expected me to be there, and I expected to be there for myself to run it. So we did, and I took some Tylenol or whatever and just kind of made it happen. We've been doing this Tuesday skip kind of schedule where we do heroic 1, 2, 7, 8, mythic 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems to be working out okay. It gets, that way I can bring whoever wants to come. I no longer have 35 signups on a nightly basis.
That's good. That makes it easier for you.
Yeah, it's good, but now we get pressure in the other direction, right, where we don't have enough to do mythic. So I feel like this is the best compromise because the people who want to do mythic, they don't have to spend an entire night in heroic, and they don't have to feel, but they're still going to show up. So that works out pretty well. I can bring people in, everybody can come to the important 2 bosses on heroic, and then I can cut people. Mythic reclears, I mean, it's just so smooth with the zone buff and all that stuff to just get back through these bosses. And we had time to look at Princess on Tuesday and then all night Wednesday. I'm up over 100 pulls now, and like we're really just not making any significant progress. Again, I had to rotate a couple more people in this week because attendance is all over the place. So it's like, hey, you want to come look at it? And it's like not really people that I would be on my short list of 20 to bring to Mythic Prague. And now they're 75, 80, 90 pulls behind the core. And it's like, it's not fair to them. And it's a burden on continuing Prague. But we're even so, like, I think the people I did bring in were doing okay with the phase 1 dance overall, but we haven't had a point where we've gotten cleanly through phase 1 into intermission and then back out into main phase. That hasn't happened yet, even 100 pulls deep. But we have had a couple really, we've had some good phase 1s where basically everybody's alive going into intermission. So this week obviously is going to be tonight. I'm going to try to run raid, but I'm not going to have bodies for mythic. So tonight is going to be heroic cleanup, maybe Firelands if people want to do some time walking and just kind of hang out. Raid this week coming up is going to be, maybe we could squeeze in some reclears on Sunday. We might not be looking at Nexus Princess again for 2 more weeks, if even ever again. But the good thing is, I think the people who do want to show up and reclear, it's just so fun and smooth. Like your power just keeps stacking up, man.
Yeah, it does.
And that's something we haven't had in a long time. It's normally by now it's like we'd be at this kind of for weeks now. We would have been at this relatively flat point of power acquisition where it's like nobody's gotten upgrades in months. Well, this is what it is.
There isn't class tuning coming in or anything like it. It really would be if there is, it's very minor. It's not dramatically changing anything. Yeah,
not to the point where you're, essentially getting like a hard nerf on a fight or whatever. Yeah. So, compared to the zone buff and now the ring, it's like there's optimism. If we can keep attendance going, then we can get new stuff maybe. And if not, then at least it's going to feel better. And the reclears are going to keep getting smoother and smoother all the time. I didn't have my ring for anything of this stuff. I just couldn't. I didn't have the fortitude to go play the content. Like I had to be in bed, so I didn't have my ring for raid, didn't have it for keys. I've got 6 of my 8 vault keys in this week so far, just 10s and 11s, and man, like it feels. We'll talk about some tuning changes that they made this week. Also, just I kind of have my pocket Mistweaver buddy at this point. Like I'm just pretty much exclusively doing keys with Mistweaver healer, and like having Ring of Peace for basically every Ascendant cast this week. It's like
fair. That's fair.
And it's like, I don't need him to use
Yep.
Ring of Peace for anything else. He can place it at range, so he doesn't have to reposition. Nobody has to reposition. It comes out, he drops Ring of Peace, they go away, we go about our business. So that feels really nice. And, you know, I do still, actually, one of my main guys that I run with, he didn't have portals done because he only has a chance to really do like one key a night. He goes to bed super early. He's going to work super early in the morning. So he was missing, I think, Grim Batol still. So we got that done for him this week. So that was great to kind of get teleports finished for him. And also, you know, people who've missed out on just sheer volume of keys or, you know, have switched mains or whatever, dude, it's so good right now. Like the changes that came in this week with Crest acquisition, it's like, and with the cap being off, it's like mind-boggling how many crests we're getting from just timing 11s and stuff. And it's like, it's like you kind of mentioned, it's like open season on crafting stuff. So for like catch-up pieces or whatever, it's so like, it's so huge right now for like my buddy who switched mains. It's like, here you go. Like, let's just go crush some 10s and 11s. You're going to get a giant stack of gilded crests. You can upgrade all of your myth track stuff. You can address those problem slots with crafted pieces. Like the econ is just flowing on that stuff. So that feels great. Vault was incredibly good to me this week. I pulled myth track Wings of Shattered Sorrow, which is the cloak from Rashanan.
Yep.
The special item that when you take a big hit, it gives you a bunch of avoidance and you take bonus healing. So that was like probably far and away the biggest upgrade that could have existed for me. I was running a champ track wings that I replaced with a myth track wing. So that was like 20 item levels or whatever raw. And yeah, so like my warrior is now fully myth tracked out except for the 2 crafted slots. You know, in raid gear, like with my raid trinkets and stuff, she's like 638 equipped, which is just so completely ridiculous and OP. So that feels great. I did go on Thursday. I went out and did Thursday evening. I was feeling a bit more like a human being. So I went out and didn't have any guild kind of obligations or anything. I did Siren Isle. I will echo your sentiment. You know, I obviously like the intro is maybe if you're reading everything and taking your time, it's like maybe an hour and a half to go through all the intro story,
which is new lore. I want to point out, this is not stuff that they're like, oh, you need to have played this expansion 4 expansions ago, or this thing that happened just in Dragonflight. Like, this is stuff that is like ancient lore that is being discovered that involves a race that we know of, but doesn't necessarily involve like characters that we know of. There's a couple of pieces here and there that I noticed harken back to BFA and some of the BFA storyline, but not in like a major tie-in, like in I recognize that name. That name is a name that's used inside BFA.
Right.
That's it. Like,
it's like these exiled Vrykul from Storm Peaks that like settled there. And yeah, I thought the intro story was really cool. The island is tiny. Like, God, the zone is so small.
Yep.
The loop is pretty fast. I think it's great. I really didn't want, I'm glad there's not some massive new chunk to dig into in a .7. It's not time for that. Like, this is a relatively small patch, all things considered.
We're moving into .1 soon.
Yeah, like we're going to be digging really deep back into the outdoor loop in just a few more weeks. So like, I'm glad this is like this. I'll go do the weekly reset loop and power up my ring and check out the story beats. And I think the story setup is really cool. And I think the fact that I am not being really sort of influenced to spend a lot of time on the island doing some kind of grind is a plus. I mean, if you want to go grind Flame Blessed Iron and buy up all the cosmetics and stuff, I mean, you could go do that if you want to. I will not be doing that. At least not at this point. You know, I'll go out there for the weekly stuff, do it up, and come back next week. And I think that's a great place for it to be. It's not tied to some other feature like Zscaru vaults where it's like, okay, you need to do stuff outside to get this currency to then go do this solo or small group thing. And then that, you know, you had to repeat that over and over again. Like, that was okay for what it was back then. This is just super streamlined. And I mean, you could, the other side of the coin is like, well, this is just it's stupid. There's just no reason to do it. Whatever. Like, I don't even care about it. I think it's fine to have something for people to dig into if they want to, for cosmetics and for, just to have, okay, if all you care about is the story and power for your character, okay, you go do this for a very small sort of window of time in your weekly kind of loop, and you're done. It's just a little side quest. That's what this is. I think our buddy Corey Missildine described it on socials. It's like a JRPG side quest that gives you a really OP item, and that's cool. And I love that take on it. That's what it felt like to me too. So I think it's positioned really well for this. We're at the end of season 1. This is not a new season. This is not a new role. It's not a big new part of the game. It's a little appetizer to keep you, give you a little something to do while we wait for season 2. I did come back Friday after the changes that we'll talk about. So I got all the citrines. I'm ready to use the ring and check it out in raid and dungeons tonight. So that's cool.
Man, it's crazy. So like, I'm gonna butt in for a moment with the ring stuff, because for people who aren't paying attention necessarily to what's going on all of the min-max forums and all that kind of stuff, and there was a lot of initial, hey, the ring came out, oh man, the ring's not very good if you already have a 636 ring or above, this is too bad, we're probably not going to use it for a week or two, et cetera, as far as item level gap and stats go, because you give up a lot of secondary stats. However, there are a few gems that are just like great, powerful gems, and most people are using 3 of the same ones. But if you are choosing to take you get X amount of secondary stat to all secondary stats, that's a great gem to have. The increase, if you're doing any kind of group content at all with people on a regular basis, the have a chance to proc that gem by 150% on a regular basis is also absolutely phenomenal as a buff. When we were doing Mythic Plus, I had 4 or 5 of those buffs running, the 150% ones running through the whole dungeon. Like, they would drop briefly here and there, but otherwise those buffs would go up, they'd stay up through most of the dungeon, and each one was like 761 to my secondary stats. So it was like, oh, this is like having more than another flask. Like, I was flasked, and it was like having more than another flask, but a prismatic flask that increases your stats in every of those secondary categories. It was great. It felt really good to do that content.
Nice.
So yeah,
it's just going to keep getting better as we keep getting item levels.
Exactly. So you're just like, okay,
that's really nice.
I can't wait till this thing hits 1,000, and you're like, oh, I have 1,000 to all the secondary stats times 5. So
right.
and I don't know if it's group based as far as the buff goes. Like, we'll have to see when we get into raid. That's gonna be later today. Whether or not this is like, oh yeah, this is a group-based buff, or this is something where we're gonna have like 25,000 additional stats, which would be very broken.
True, man. If it's across the whole raid,
I'm assuming it's group-based.
Cap somewhere, like
Yeah.
So. I mean, it's tough because players always kind of gravitate towards a simple answer, and it's like, what you're getting from raw stats, and if your raw stats are high, then that's good, and if they're low, then like this has to be really good to overcome how good my raw stats would be. So. It's been a bit of a weird thing, and just for me, popping the ring off, that I was wearing to put the circlet on, and I just lost 6, 7, 8 percentage points of haste off of, one gear slot. Like that does feel like crap, and low haste is not like a style that I want to play, but a pretty quick, just doing outdoor stuff, I was like, this is actually adding quite a bit of damage. Like, if I'm fighting stuff in AoE, it's already doing about as much damage as my lightning strikes are doing for my hero talent. Like, if this is equivalent to adding like a free hero talent, I think that could be really good. That's kind of probably worth 6 or 7% haste. Like, I could deal with the reduced throughput probably.
Well,
so
even in raid, so I was looking at logs on Tuesday and Wednesday night before any of the changes came in for the ring, and I was looking at people who are running the ring on Mythic Queen, just because that's what we're working on, so specifically Mythic Queen, and there were groups where there are 4 or 5 people wearing it, and each of those 4 or 5 people were contributing somewhere between 25 and 45 million healing each to the raid by just running the one healing gem that we had access to. And I was like, wow,
that's a lot,
if
man.
everyone wore this healing gem,
right?
like, that is going to be a massive amount of healing that just stabilizes your raid through all of that sustained damage. Any kind of ticking damage that's happening, which that whole fight is just like baked into. Like that is just literally double clicking a gem will remove it. You can just double click it and it'll come out of your ring and you can put a new one in. Like by doing that for specific fights and putting in that healing gem would be a phenomenal stabilization for your raid group, which might even mean you can bring another DPS. I don't know. Like it's one of those situations. So like,
right. And like a lot of stuff is going to be overhealing, but also like it's so passive that it's not like it's mana turning into overhealing or something.
Yeah.
So it's not really a concern. And also like you're looking at stuff before everybody could even get like an optimal gem loadout because only those first 4 citrines were available on Tuesday and Wednesday. So like, it should be a lot better at next look. And, you know, as the weeks go on and item level goes up. So, you know, these tricky items always are pretty controversial when they first come out, but then as we get to power them up, the proof really just ends up in the pudding, you know, and it's like, well, like, okay, yeah, maybe like you individual player your numbers would be more optimized if you weren't running the ring, but like this is a co-op PvE game too. Like sometimes it doesn't matter as much like what is individually best for one player. It's about the group and the group meeting its objectives, you know?
Yeah.
And this item is very clearly designed to play into that. You know, it's good to wear it solo, but it's really good to wear it in a group. So, so tonight will be my first night probably doing endgame stuff with it. So we'll see how it's feeling. A couple other quick notes just on the non-main, you know, War Within Prot Warrior side. Monk and Druid each got a hero track ring from Vault this past week, which the Monk one really wasn't super well statted, but I don't care. My goal here is to see them all hero track, you know, get them both all hero track, all slots. So I'm at the point now where Monk needs a weapon and I got to go get his Circlet. Druid needs a belt, I think, and I got to go get his Circlet. And I'm done for season 1. Might just end up going crafteds for those if I have the crest or whatever on those tunes to pull them together. And that would be really great, you know, just to kind of check that off the list and have them fully geared up for the season, in my opinion. I'm not going to take them in the high keys or mythic raids, so hero track's kind of the end of the line. So had some good luck on that, and still kind of keeping a toe in SOD. Didn't play much. I think I only had like one night of SOD, but I got to like 41.5 from just having barely hit 40 from doing incursions. And they put the rune vendor in on Tuesday. So once I do have time, I'm looking forward to getting back in there because I only had the phase 1 runes, right? And you had to find them. And some of them were really obscure. Some of them were really expensive. Some of them were really grindy. Yeah, they kind of ran the gamut. My goal with coming back to SOD, I didn't know they were doing this. And I came back a couple weeks before it happened. My thought was I'm just going to level and head down, blinders on. What I'm doing is leveling. I'm going to do quests, going to do incursions. I'll get to 60, and then I'll figure out what I got to do for all the runes. And then kind of out of the blue, I feel like they just put these vendors in this past week. They're like in the starting areas and in the capital cities. They sell every rune available to your class for 1 copper each with no other restrictions. So you just go learn all the runes and then you can apply all the runes to all the slots. And it's just like a massive power bump. And I mean, the stuff they've added since I kind of drifted away from SOD for Prot Warrior is stuff like, you know, Sword and Board, like the Shield Slam proc, stuff that really makes it play a lot more like Warrior, Prot Warrior ended up like, over the years, you know, I would say really sort of taken like I think Wrath of the Lich King, mid-late Wrath of the Lich King is where this style really started to emerge for Prot Warrior, and then they've incorporated a bunch of the stuff since then into what SOD Prot is kind of like at this point with the runes. So that's cool. It should be a huge power bump for finishing off like leveling and stuff. So that was really cool. I think that was a great idea. Like part of the thing about SOD is you need that casual accessibility. And I think they've finally kind of really landed on that because now you can start up a fresh character. You can go get all the runes right away and play around with them. You'll have more runes than you have gear slots to put them on because like you don't get shoulders when you're level 1, right? So, like that's kind of funny, but you can go get them all, play around with all the runes and the combos and the play styles. And I mean, the way raiding works, like they have like the flex raids now. So it's like stuff flexes, you know, it caps at like 10 players or whatever for the scaling, but then you can bring more bodies. So, that like I'm in a guild now that's very active with raiding, and they just bring whoever. I'm not leveled up, so I don't have the time, so I haven't been joining them. But it's really cool to kind of see how the community has shifted to like, okay, as long as we have like our baseline raiders that we need to do this content, then like we want to grab as many people as we can because it's all additive at this point, and like we want people invested in this server in SOD. And I think that's part of what's really turning the ship around for the mode. That casual accessibility was what was amazing about phase 1. That's what I loved about it. And it felt like that really just started to diminish as soon as phase 2 rolled out, and just kept getting worse. And I think they really reversed course on that. And the final part of that is getting these rune vendors in, where like, man, do you have like, I don't know, 30 copper or whatever? Okay, you can have every rune in the game. Here you go have fun. So that's cool. Again, like between being sick, having end of year stuff and holiday stuff and other WoW stuff, like I just ended up not spending that much time inside this week. But man, what an incredible change for those servers.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, because I want to be sure we get in and cover the massive show that we have. Before we do, I just want to say one last thing, which is we are going to be covering the PTR update stuff as it comes out, but not like necessarily just data mined things that we have no context for. But obviously there were some posts that went out this past week as well around, the Undermine development notes, as well as like a video that came out that take a trip to Undermine, that kind of stuff. We're going to save that for next week, because next week's going to be a quiet week because Blizzard's going to be shut down for it. And I say that knowing that I may have just jinxed it and we might get a huge update. But hey, we both win if that happens. All right. So we'll save that for then. We got a lot of stuff to cover in this episode already, so we're going to dig into that right now. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, meaning that the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from Arena Skirmishes by 50%, and there's a quest to win 10 of them, which gets you some conquest honor and some bronze if you're still trying to gather some things from the anniversary event. The actual event this week, the World Soul sort of style event this week, is the Delves from Bran. So you won't just head just outside of the inn inside Dornegal. You'll head out there, take a left, walk down the stairs, and take another left into Bran's area and pick up the quest there if you're trying to make your crafted items and get your fragment for that. But there will still be obviously the dungeon quest for you to pick up outside of the inn, as well as another quest for you to grab there as well that you can do to get some more rewards for the week. And you still want to be out there doing your, special assignment on Tuesday and Friday, and your theater troupe, and your Awakening the Machine, and Spreading the Light, and Severed Threads Pact, and World Soul Memories, because those all still give bronze, as well as more of those keys for the Delves that you're then going to be running for the Delves, and if you're going to do Bountiful ones. So that's still worthwhile picking up and doing some of those other events that are going on, as well as that recipe drop that you can get from the theater troop event that goes on there. There's a chance you get rare recipes that drop from there. Some of the recipes that you might normally get from like the little like dossier folder you can get at the end of Mythic Plus dungeons now. That's a similar kind of system to the theater troop, where you can just get a really rare recipe from the end of a dungeon just from doing that as well. So once you're done doing that kind of stuff, you can head on over to your PvP area and get your South Shore Terran Mill on. I won't say Torn Mill. I haven't done that in years. South Shore Terran Mill on, which is the brawl for the week, where basically during the 10-year anniversary of WoW, long time ago, they put together a 40-on-40 deathmatch brawl where you could essentially go back to South Shore before it was decimated and Terran Mill and actually have a good old 40-on-40 deathmatch where one team tries to push the other team back into their base and then realizes they've extended too far and that the team's, respawning too quickly and is then pushing them back. And then they go back and forth in this epic battle that can take place. So this is harkening back to the days when in classic World of Warcraft, as in the original World of Warcraft long ago, this happened on a regular basis. These fights would just spark up and would run for like days sometimes, of the horde pushing into South Shore and killing all of the NPCs that are in South Shore and killing the flight master so people can't leave because the Flight Master's dead. So you literally could Hearth was one option, which was on a 1 hour cooldown back then, or you could try and just run, and that was like your best bet to try and get out of there. But yeah, it was a good time. So if you enjoy experiencing something silly, it's also a great way to make a whole bunch of honor. It's also the something different quest, which means there's bronze involved. So you get the Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor for that, as well as the regular reward. So yeah, then check out South Shore versus Terran Mill.
Yeah, it's the 10th anniversary of the 10th anniversary.
It's true, so it is.
It's perfect
It's the 10th anniversary of the South Shore and Terran Mill brawl.
Yeah, yeah, that's weird to think about. Yeah, but yeah, this is the whole idea of this is sort of the emergent world PvP that used to happen, like you were talking about in the days before there were battlegrounds. I guess you could go do this on Classic Fresh right now, right? Because battlegrounds aren't quite out yet. So there's probably people fighting over South Shore right now on those servers as we're speaking. But yeah, man, if you need like HKs or something for an achievement or whatever, this is a good brawl to farm those, because yeah, it's just 80 players just killing each other with no other objectives for the duration. So not much technique, just try to stay with your group, don't get too deep, bring some death knights, and get people out of position and rack up those HKs. It's pretty funny. I wonder why it would be cool if they did a similar thing in Ashen Vale. There used to be a lot of world PvP down there too, because that's the Kalimdor version of like really the first place that Alliance and Horde players would have collided back then. And I was an Alliance player on a PvP realm back then, and yeah, we used to fight over Astronar and stuff all the time. That it would be cool to see them kind of just expand on this concept, I think, because it's a very simple concept, which makes it a good PvP mode, because you just queue up with your team and you fight the other team, and there you go. So it'd be cool to see them add other locations for this type of idea. Maybe not. I guess the problem would be, how would you do it? Would you then would it be an additional brawl, or would it be one brawl and you get like one, 2 or 3 or 4 different locales or whatever?
I'd be fine if they went, okay, we're going to take this brawl and we're going to rotate which locations it's at, and we're going to go back to BFA, and we're going to rip out the War of the Ancients one and those battles that they'd put in, and go
the war fronts,
and go, the war fronts are now part of the brawl rotation for this. I'd be absolutely fine.
Yeah, that'd be cool too. Yeah,
because it's a similar thing. There are objectives in there, but they're historical events and fights that took place. And this kind of falls into the same category to me. So I think that would be kind of neat to check out as well. But yeah, I do think Warfronts are a piece of content that actually were an enjoyable piece of content, that have achievements attached to them that people still want to earn, and mounts and stuff attached to them people still want to earn. Let's roll those into the brawl rotation so that people can passively have a way of gaining those sorts of rewards as well, as opposed to like, hey, I need to find 40 of my friends to all queue up, including opposition, to try and make this thing happen, because there's just no way to easily do it at the moment. So a brawl would be a great way to encourage people to get those sorts of rewards and things in and still have a good time. All right, world boss for the week is Kordak, the Dormant Protector. This is the construct in Isle of Dorn that's dropping some 603 loot. This is one of the easiest ones to get, because this is basically right outside the city. So if you're someone who's like, hey, last week I got the key fragment, the Titan Disc fragment quest to actually finish up, so I can now get 50 of those if I'm not in a group and I kill the world boss. Here's a great time for you to be able to go kill the world boss. That's, basically where we're at. So if you haven't finished it yet, pop out of Dornegal, sit by that boss on top of the arch for a bit until someone pulls it, or even better, wait till you see 7 or 8 people show up and then pull it yourself as a tank. And you can then essentially encourage other people to come in and kill it for you as you tank it, and have a really good time with getting the 50 additional fragments from that. Mythic Plus affixes. We got a Devour week. This means that players are periodically afflicted with a heal absorb while in combat. The healing absorb can be dispelled, and when it is, you gain maximum health and a critical strike buff. So this is 10% additional maximum health if you actually clear, obviously, the buff off of the debuff, the absorb off of everyone, or and it's a 20% crit buff if you clear it off of everyone. If you fail to do so, these shields, when they wear off, will heal enemies for 10% of their health. And this does include bosses, which is irritating. So be sure that you're dealing with these quickly. And this is definitely the week where it is very difficult for a tank to finish off that last 5% of a boss. Because if you get a shield that comes in and the tank can't clear it off themselves in some way, you are now in a negative space where essentially the boss will be healing more than the tank's doing damage to it, and you can't eventually finish it off. So just be aware of that with Devour. And as far as this week goes, normally I would be like nervous or worried or comment about like, man, crit buff is cool and it's nice to have, but I don't really feel it and I'm not really sure. Maximum health isn't as nice as, damage reduction from versatility. So this one's kind of like the second tier, like second grade. It's the diet version of Voidbound, right? Like Voidbound is kind of like the true original, and this is kind of the diet. But the caveat here, the thing that is like dug into my mind now is the ring. With this ring, you're going to have so many stats depending on what people are doing with this ring inside of Mythic Plus. I feel like the 20% crit is just going to put you over the top into like a crazy realm of critical strike. Because if you're essentially already gaining like a flask worth of critical strike on your character, and then you get 20% more, I feel like you are going to see some pretty crazy critical strikes happening in this. And so you'll see some people rejoicing over what this is going to feel like this week. So I'm hopeful that is what this is going to look like. Also, hey, great week for you to gem a healing gem into your ring, because this just passively helps with all this stuff. So like, hey, great week for that, because, it may just clear all of the shields if everyone ran a healing gem. It might be a totally passive, we don't even have to dispel it, ignore mechanic, depending on how that interacts, because you might end up in a situation where the heals are proccing so often off of different people that this is just cleared automatically, which would be cool.
Yeah, or at least like knocks a big chunk off of it. It's a weird one to talk about because it's not explained too well, I don't think. Like the tooltip in the UI or whatever that like shows you what this affix does, like doesn't really make sense compared to how it actually plays out, because
Sure.
like it doesn't, there's nothing in the field. It's a debuff on all players. It's called Void Rift, and it does like it's a shadow dot based on that scales up with your max health. And then, the healing effect, if it goes uncleared on the enemies, really sucks. It's probably like the worst downside.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, we call it a healing absorb, but it's not really like a straight up absorb.
No, it's a counter that tracks how much incoming healing is happening, and after a certain amount of incoming healing has happened, it then actually does clear the debuff.
We need we don't have a word in the lexicon that like means what that interaction is. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It behaves like a healing absorb, where it's like, okay, you have to receive this much healing, and then the thing pops. Except you can just receive normal. You're just receiving healing. The healing isn't going to the thing, but it does count against how much of it you need to have received, and then like the buff stacks based on how many of them get cleared. It's just I feel like it's so strange to talk about, even though like in practice it's kind of just like, oh, you see this thing, okay, how do I get it off of me? Okay, it's off of me, cool. I have a ability I can talent into to remove it basically like every other cast, so that feels great, and a lot of classes do have it, so just make sure you have it. Self-healing is great, consumables are great. I think with the ring options, that it's gonna be great this week too. Just really kind of round out like what different approaches you could take to clearing it. I mean, it's dispellable. You could do like mass dispels or poison cleanse. Having all those counterplay options is awesome, and I think the ring presents a new suite of like, let's say, soft counterplay. You're not dispelling it with the ring, right? But it could add so much healing around the party, like you kind of mentioned, that you maybe just splash it around from ring procs and then it goes away.
Yep.
I also feel like now this is anecdotal possibly, but I feel like where we've scaled up to in terms of character power at this point in the season, when my group's doing 10s or 11s, like this feels so much different than it did the first rotation.
Sure.
And I don't know if maybe there's some other like numerical changes they made in the background or whatever that maybe I'm forgetting about or we didn't dig into, but like it doesn't, this, at the outset of the season, it was like, oh man, how do we get all of these off of all of us fast enough every single time for this not to be a huge problem? And like the last time it rolled around, dude, we were kind of barely thinking about it. We're just blasting it off, you know? And I think, yeah, this rotation should be even better. We do have low keystone rank tyrannical this week. So if you are somebody who's trying to get into the system late in the season and you're kind of working your way up, it is going to be like it's going to be a little more challenging climbing the ladder this week, I think, because of that. Like your healer might be more stressed out than usual, and the bosses are just going to be alive so much longer. So something to keep in mind. It's weird. I feel like this all kind of flips around, and like Devour is way better for higher and more practiced groups and more punishing to lower and less practiced groups. And of course, like when you get into that upper echelon, you don't even think about fortified tyrannical. The dungeon just is what it is. But when you're in that lower bracket and trying to work your way through it, you know, I feel like that low tyrannical can be really punishing if you're not practiced with the bosses yet. So I think at the top end, this is a great week. One of the really, you know, Devour is I think the second best affix that we get, really. So I think it's incredible for teams doing those 10, 11 ranges. But I think it flips around a little bit. If you're in that 4, 5, 6 range, that might be a little bit, you know, if you're trying to get it up into 10s, I think this week might be a little trickier for players that are still on the, you know, on the ascent.
Yeah. And so, first and foremost, I think language wise, I'm just going to call this a quota. I think players are afflicted with a healing quota while in combat. Healing or dispelling the quota gives players a stacking max health buff and a crit buff. Failing to heal or dispel the quota will heal enemies for the max of their health. So you basically just have a set number that you need to achieve within this period of time. Otherwise, the enemies get a buff. It's nothing to do with actually absorbing anything. So I'm just removing absorb from the equation. I think language-wise, that will read better.
Yeah. Like, it's because we know what we mean when we say it, but we don't want to confuse people either. Like, but I think there is a minor downside to the way that works. Not that I want it to be healing absorb, but like if you cannot be healed because you're at full health, then you cannot.
You can't use a health stone at full health with this debuff on you. You can't.
Right. Yeah. So, it doesn't do anything. But I mean, you do have the dot, but you know, so you have to catch a window where you're actually damaged in order to actually get healed. So that is one caveat with it. It's better than it being a straight absorb where you can't get healed. But it does complicate, especially like with consumables, like you mentioned, like that makes it really tricky, because if you want a lockstone or whatever, well, if you're full health in that window of time when you're trying to do it, you can't, and then it doesn't count towards the debuff.
All right, Feast of Wintervale is live through the 5th of January. New this year, we have the Festive Red Holiday and Festive Green Holiday transmog sets, which you can purchase for gold from the vendors in Ironforge and Orgrimmar. So if you just go and talk to the vendors and scroll to the next page past that first initial page, you'll just start seeing transmog, and you can just buy it. And it's not like prohibitively expensive. There's a cost associated, but it's not like, oh, this is 500,000 gold. No, it's nothing like that. If you want to buy these things, you can just buy them from the vendor, get that whole transmog set wrapped up. There's also the Grunch pet from the Stolen Present reward from going out and killing the Grinch. There's the new Hunter tameable pet, which is the Dreaming Festive Reindeer out in Old Hillsbrad Foothills. So if you're hunters, be sure you are taming this new one that's out there. You have to actually be wearing or been transmogged into the chest, waist, boots, pants, or shorts of the festive green or red holiday cosmetics. So you do need to buy out the outfit to be able to actually get this. And Wintervale outfit the hat, chest, and boots, or have the cosmetic buff from the disposable Wintervale suit toy. So you can essentially have this disposable Wintervale suit toy that will also help if you wanted to actually be taming these pets. So you have to look like, you know, Great Father Winter in order to be able to get the Hillsbrad Foothills tamed reindeer. But very cool for folks that are hunters out there who want to get one of these. I certainly would recommend trying to do it. But yes, Jason, let's take a moment to talk about the fact that you just buy this with gold because there's no currency associated with this event.
Incredible. I mean, I was a little confused at first when we saw the new stuff for 2024 because I was like, wait, there's all this new Mog, but you just go buy it from Smoky Wood Pastures and you just give them gold and then it's done. Okay. I love it. What a great addition. I mean, I understand that, you know, you have these holiday currencies with some of the holiday events and you want people to participate in them so that you have like a mass of players that are doing the things together in this, you know, co-op MMORPG with a big open world. Okay. Like I do understand that. I do think like the Wintervale season in real life is like not the time to be having players doing that, right? Like everybody's got stuff going on probably.
They're traveling,
so,
they might be away from their, you know, their computers or from their games. Yeah.
Right. Like religiously like hitting up every single day your WoW stuff is tricky this time of year. So just having like, okay, this vendor's up for 2 weeks, go buy the stuff if you want it. If not, I mean, we can only assume it'll be there next year, so you can make up your mind, whatever. The grunge from the stolen present, I got mine yesterday, so that was only, 3 days? It started on Thursday. Yeah, so just it took me 3 days. I saw people getting it the first day. I don't think it's going to be some super rare thing. Keep in mind, if you miss stuff from previous years' presents, the ones they put out like on Christmas Day on the server from Great Father Winter, you can get them from doing the stolen present daily, and I think you can do it. You should be able to do it on multiple characters, and so if you have a bunch of stuff to catch up on, it's a roll of the dice. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get a thing you don't have, but it is the only way to get that stuff if you missed it. So keep that in mind. That, you know, depending on your situation with that and what level that you care about it, that might be a thing to be doing every day, possibly on multiple tunes. But yeah, like, I think some cool additions this year. Grunch is an amazing pet. What a great pet for Wintervale. You know, I don't really feel a big pull to go get the hunter tame on my hunter that I barely ever play. So that's cool. There are people who are going to be super excited to go out there and do that and reenact their favorite scene from Jingle All the Way of, you know, taming a reindeer with violence. And you can go do that. You know, like when Arnold Schwarzenegger punches the reindeer and then they share a beer. That's what you can go do that now, basically. So that's cool. I've seen people that are like over the moon excited about having the dreaming festive reindeer as a hunter tame. That's awesome. I'm happy for them, and I think it's a cool addition to the holiday. It's not a thing I'm going to do, so that's cool for me too, because I have other stuff that I want to do instead.
That's fair.
Yeah, great. I mean, I don't see this. I guess like I love the fact that the new Mog sets are just purchasable with gold just day one. It's there's a little bit of a bummer that I don't think there's a set associated with them in the set UI. You know how much I love to fill out those things, but I don't expect that it's some kind of precursor for like how other new holiday stuff is going to work through 25. Wintervale is just different than a lot of these other long, you know, two week holidays or longer, because there's no currency and there really isn't much of a daily grind. Like your daily grind is Mets and the reindeer and the stolen present, and that's only if you don't have the stuff that they're just going to put under the tree on the 25th, right? So I as much as I would love to say or to believe it on some level that like, oh, they're turning the corner with how they're doing the holiday stuff and it's just all going to be gold on vendors now, and why do we need all these other currencies or whatever? I don't see that being the case. I think Wintervale is just different than these other ones, and I think it makes sense to distribute this way. Because could you imagine if they put in these two new sets, and especially with the requirement for the tame, right? And if it was like, well, this year we're introducing a new set of dailies around Feast of Wintervale. These dailies award, you know, special Wintervale treat currency that you can use to get these transmog sets. Like, no, dude, that's not it. That's not what we want. And it's definitely the wrong time of year.
Imagine
to be
how
doing
much
stuff
they'd
like
have
that.
to deliver. They'd have to have like Metzen be worth like 100 tokens or every day, and have go back to like all the way back to Warlords of Draenor and be like, okay, we're adding in tokens for things that you can earn during this, and like all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, like all the Grumpus stuff or whatever that was called, the Grumpus area out there. I can't remember off the top of my head where that stuff where it even is. But yeah, I mean, I'm really glad they didn't go that direction. I think it's okay to do it for some of the other holidays, but I get why they don't do it for this, because it's about, you know, what you're kind of offering players to do for how to spend their time. And Winter Veil is just supposed to be about like, hey, here's some fun stuff that we threw in, and you know, whatever. You got all the themed transmog stuff on the trading post and all that this year, so that's sort of more of the, hey, grind stuff in the game and then get the cosmetic reward. That's like a nice way to use that system to dovetail with, you know, real life events and holidays and stuff. There's a part of me that wishes they just do this for all the holidays and you just spend gold to buy the new stuff. But I have a feeling that, you know, we're not going to,
it's never happened.
If we're going to see additions to Love is in the Air, we'll see additions. They just restructured Love is in the Air last year, and I think actually the new structure is quite good. But I don't think whatever new stuff is going to come in is just going to be gold, because it's just gold for new stuff now. But it's awesome for this, man. I went and bought it up right away. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but who cares? It's the principle of the thing. I get all the mod.
Sure.
Done. It's chalk it up. Here's some gold. Thanks. See you next year.
Yeah. All right, so last year we had Metzen rewards for the Highland Drake Wintervale Drake armor, the saddle. So if you are someone who's still looking to get that, you can still get that from Metzen the Reindeer as a reward, as well as the festive trans-dimensional bird whistle toy is another thing that you can get from doing the Metzen the Reindeer stuff as well. And then we have obviously just the general Smoky Pastures stuff that's happening inside Ironforge and Orgrimmar. If you're someone who's trying to get, you know, the Pepe a tiny winter hat, or if you're trying to get the Winter Veil outfit, or with it has a tiny beard that Pepe will get for that. If you're trying to get whatever it is reward wise out there, lots of toys and whatnot, be sure that you're paying attention there. I think there's a trainable pet that you can get inside of the snow globes, so definitely be sure you're getting that during this period of time. There's a lot to do, so be sure you're paying attention to your Winter Veils and getting that in there, because there's tons and tons and tons of stuff, including like at least 20 toys. So plenty to pick up and do. All right. Circe's Circlet, the ring, which I know some people were like, a circlet's a helm, but circlet is actually just Latin for a circle. So yeah, anyways, Circe's Circlet is basically a hot topic around the community at the moment. As I said, it launched in a state where a lot of vocal minority were saying, hey, this is worse than a 636 ring. We're never going to use this ring until it's like 2 or 3 weeks later. This is very disappointing. Other groups are going, 4 gems, and they aren't even like my best 4 gems. I'm not going to use this, so, you know, this is really too bad. And then Blizzard started turning dials, twisting knobs, and making changes. We basically got a post here from... Oh, geez. This is... Let me actually pop this open. This is from 2 days ago, that a hot fix went live on all realms at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, and says, today we're working to update the game with a hot fix that will make all singing citrines available on Siren Isle, allowing players to acquire all of them in the current week. The system was originally designed to have different citrines associated with different enemy cultures as they invaded the Siren Isle on a rotating basis. But having to wait for specific invasion type in order to obtain your citrin of choice has felt like it's creating more frustration than anticipation. The gems belonging to the goblins, Arathi, and Earthen should come from doing the events on the Isle that are started at the Siren Isle command map. After getting them once, you'll be able to buy them and store them in your warbank for your alts. The gems that belong to enemy factions should now be purchasable from the Taljori, the Tortolan vendor sitting on the large rock behind Bargus. Happy holidays, Kyvax. Well, man, that was a big kickoff. And that wasn't even like the whole change this week, but that's the one I wanted to lead with this week, because people were like, oh man, I can't get my citrines, was one of the most critical pieces of feedback that they were receiving. And so they addressed that very quickly. That happened on Friday. And yeah, literally Friday night, I was doing my rounds and just suddenly started seeing that the rewards on the map for doing the events were the different citrines that I didn't have. And I was like, well, this is awesome. This literally went live while I was doing it. This is perfect. And I spent about, I think, 30 to 45 minutes just doing the events over and over again and got all of them. And so that was great. There is one that got bugged. So there's one that right now it will appear as a reward from one of the events. When you go to do the event about a certain minute into the event being open and unlocked, it will actually lose that reward. For some reason, it's dropping off of the quest. And so you won't actually get the citrine from completing that boss because there's no actual reward attached to it. There's something buggy with the quest. What people have found has fixed this, and this is anecdotal. This isn't something that I have done, but from my guild, is if you reset the boss. So if you pull that boss and drag him out of the cave and they reset once, then you'll actually guarantee you get the citrine every time, because it breaks, well, I guess it resets whatever was broken with the quest in that situation. So then you will get the citrine for doing that. So just, go into bear form or whatever it is, taunt and run out of the cave and try and keep it on you and get it out of the cave to reset it. And you'll basically, everyone will hate you, but then thank you afterwards when they actually get their citrine. It's one of those situations. You do it for their own good. So that is one of the ways to fix that. I'm sure they're coming in for a hotfix for it anyways. But I know that was creating some frustration for some of those things. I think that might have been the Thunderlords. I can't remember. There's one of those citrines was broken. Okay. We also got a post here from Kymax that says, with a change that is now testable in the 11.07 PTR, Siren gems are warbound until equipped. This will allow players to spend flame-blessed iron to purchase them and send them to alts. And so the thing that ties into, obviously, is what I just talked about in the post of, as you get a gem, they go on to vendors. And so when they're on these vendors, you can then go to the vendors and buy these gems for 50 flame blessed iron and put them into your war bank, and your alts can take them out and put them into their ring, which means you don't have to do this grind on all of your characters. You can just buy them all on your main or whoever you finish the quest chains on and actually gotten the unlocks for it, and just give them to your alts, who then just can put them into their ring and have the rings, unlocked and powered up for them. So don't worry about having to do these bosses over and over and over again to try and get all of the citrines on all of your alts. So that's a big one for folks that are doing that. And yeah, if you're like, hey, where do these last few come from? The Tortollan is selling them. Right, like literally you can walk up to the Tortollan right now and just buy them, because they just put them on the vendor for you to be able to buy those last 3 that you might be missing. However, there is a bug that I'd like to report, and I have reported in game. That the achievement for collecting all of the citrines is not counting 2 of the ones that you buy off the Tortollan. So you can buy them off of them, but it's not counting towards the achievement, which means you can't complete the achievement. So I'm assuming I'll just log in one of these days and they will have fixed it, and I'll just get the achievement text and pop up and it'll be all good to go. But just keep that in mind if you're like, hey, I'm still missing these 2, but I have them in my inventory. That's what happened. That's where they went. So that is something else to factor in. Okay. The next post from Kyvax that we want to talk about here is the improvements to the ring. So the ring went live this week, and it started at item level 639. When fully upgraded, it would reach a maximum of 658. Their goal is to make the ring a clear choice. So like when we first saw this and talked about it last week, we were like, well, it's starting at 616 and it works its way up to 639. That's okay, but like it's not going to be relevant for the majority of players for a long time unless these gems are really broken. So they went, hey, guess what? On Monday, we're buffing the ring. It's going to start at 639 eye level and go up to 658. And their goal, which I think ties a little bit into what I was talking about last week, so I think I might have called it a bit here, as well as keeping the ring relevant in Season 2. They don't want the ring to just be something that is essentially you pick it up for like 6 weeks and then it's gone because we're into Season 2 and you're going to find a 658 item and it's going to replace this ring really fast and you don't have to, not benefiting from it anymore. Instead, they buff this up to 658 item level so that it remains a relevant choice in Season 2, where it can compete with heroic gear and be replaced by mythic raid gear and high mythic plus dungeon gear. So if you are getting out of your vault a high mythic plus Season 2 piece of loot that's a ring, you might replace this ring with that. But otherwise, you're probably not replacing this ring unless you're doing mythic raid content or mythic plus content. It'll probably be on par with heroic raid gear is what they're sort of aiming for. And I will emphasize that that's also going to depend on how many people are still wearing the ring. It's going to be one of those weird things like we had back in Castle Nathria, where we had the chorus or the choir trinket, where like the more people who wore the trinket, the bigger the buff was for everyone who wore the trinket. And so you had to be like, who's wearing this thing? Can you all put us into a choir group so we can sing together so that we can all have the buff? And you try and put 5 of them together inside of a group so that they can all have the benefit. It'll probably be a similar thing with the ring for a bit, is trying to put together your ring groups, because I assume it's not raid wide. It's going to be specific to the people inside of your group. And so then you'll have ring groups for a bit, I imagine, with season 2. This may require Blizzard, to make some tuning adjustments to specific gems later so that we can avoid unintended power spikes, and we may want to buff weaker gems as well. Nonetheless, we're focused on the item level of the ring as our guide for its performance. To be clear, we do not have specific plans to diminish the ring's overall power later, but we will make adjustments as needed to ensure that it remains comparable to other rings of similar item level in Season 2. And I'm still putting it out there, man, that they could take this ring and drive it down a legendary path and have the ring be the thing for the expansion that we have with cool citrines that we're swapping out that do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like that could be a thing that they choose to do.
They could, yeah. I feel like it's just too separate from the main story of War Within for them to do that. And like they tie stuff to the story so much, right?
They do.
I think in some ways, I think more than they actually should when it comes to gameplay, because I don't disagree with your point. I just can't see them doing it because this is the JRPG side quest for the OP item or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's that, but it's a season 1 kind of thing. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the ring last week and kind of speculating about how it's going to fit in the overall landscape, if it would be good for, for players that are already geared out or whatever. And then the next day we got this post about the item level and sort of the long-term goals for it. And it's like, well, it's gonna be good, and like even if it's not good or not great this week, like you're going to use it, right?
Yeah.
Like it might take a couple weeks, it might take a little bit longer, but if you're not going to use it at 639, like I'm going to guess you're going to use it at 658. So that kind of dispelled a lot of that. I did think it was interesting in this post that, the intention is that you use it until kind of that upper echelon of season 2, that like it's just good until you start getting into Mythic Raid and high-end Mythic Plus. I think it's cool to actually explain this because, I mean, as recently as last Sunday, even people who pay as much attention to this stuff and the messaging around the game as you and I do were like, well, we'll see where this is going to ultimately land.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that they said, listen, it should be equivalent to like a season 2 heroic ring, and then you'll probably start replacing it as you gear up. Awesome. Good to know. I kind of like the idea that they're just going to tie the tuning of it to the item level. Like it seems like a good kind of guideline because it just makes it simple, right? Like that's an easy way to communicate to the player the item level. And then, hopefully they don't have to do too much like micromanaging of the citrine tuning, because I think that could get real confusing to players, or like how to use them well. So we'll see. It's been a real roller coaster week with the ring. I mean, geez, we were coming in like last week going, I don't know if this is really going to be usable. And then it came out early in the week and people were like, well, the upside is huge. There's going to be a penalty for a lot of players because you're not going to be able to get the citrines you want, and the item level is not really where you want it to be. But look at what this is capable of when it's used in this manner. And then they ended up going, here, just go get your citrines and just spec the ring out however you want it. This was by Friday, and it's like, off to the races at that point. I'm kind of two minds about this when it comes to the rollout. Like, I don't understand why they play some of this stuff so close to the vest. Like, did they really decide last Monday that they were going to shift the ring up to 639 to 658 range? If so, okay. I mean, I guess if they're fighting it out, tooth and nail about like where this is going to come in, and then finally at the 11th hour, the 658 team wins the debate and off it goes. Okay. But like, this makes it hard for people doing PTR testing, doing theory craft, whatever, to even understand and communicate with the audiences that they serve about like what to expect from the item. Right. I also think that like it's really good that they took this and changed the citrine acquisition problem so fast. 2.5 days, 3 days, whatever, and it's done. Okay. We saw recently the same kind of situation around the War Within pre-expansion event, right? It came out, it was like, well, it is good for this method. Even if you do this, it does pay off. And then like within 2 days, they just fixed it. And it was like, this is good and super fast and streamlined, and you get everything you want and you level up super fast. If they could just start, like, it's great to see them pivot on stuff fast. And when they release stuff that is flat or just flat out sucks, for them to change it in like 3 days flat at most is amazing. And it's way better than how they used to approach these situations.
Massive pivot. Yeah.
Can we somehow avoid like stepping on the rake in the first place? Right? Can we just like not ship the thing in a way that sucks? Like you did a PTR for this. I guess the problem is PTR is so time compressed and like they can't run it for that long. And so they have to just like throw everything at the testers. And if you log into the server, it's kind of hard to tell like what PTR, the final shape of the product is going to look like.
PTR had access to all the citrines and had a massively accelerated upgrade pace for the ring itself. So it was very hard to tell, because that's really what it is, right? Like, to me, this harkens all the way back, and this has come up a couple of times in my mind, to the Kyrians and their like mission table setup and how the mission tables worked back in Shadowlands, where they literally went, hey, we designed the system from the end to the start. So they designed it as, this is what the final product is, this is what the tuning's around, and this is how this is going to work. And then they didn't actually figure out, oh, if it's going to take 12 weeks to get there, in this case 6 weeks with the ring to get there, what do those 6 weeks feel like for players, right? So like for you to even get all the citrines, it would have taken 3 weeks for us to even get all of the citrines in the first place. So then you're like, okay, well, so we're now 2 weeks from now, and we're now just getting maybe the week where people finally have the citrine that they want, and now the ring is item level 628 or whatever, 29 or whatever it is, right? Because they wouldn't have bumped the item level up either. Like, it would be one of those cases where like it would be the most useless thing sitting inside the majority of players' bags had they not done this, because it was accelerated so quickly on the actual PTR that we essentially didn't get to feel what that curve was going to feel like. We just sort of got, here's the initial, here's the end product, and we condensed everything in the middle. But that middle time is what actually affects players on a daily and week-to-week basis.
Right. That's what we're literally playing when it's live. Yeah.
So that's what they need to design for a little bit, or keep in mind a little bit more, is, okay, here's final product. What's your reasonable time to get there? The reasonable time often is like, guys, if it's longer than 2 weeks, it's taken, like it is, there's going to be people who are upset about this.
Yeah. I mean, like there's an illusion, or not even really, like, I mean, Randy says it in the post, so he doesn't allude to it. He says it's felt like it's creating more frustration than anticipation.
Yep.
The anticipation was like waiting for the patch to come out.
Yeah.
The patch is out. We want to get the stuff that makes the item cool. Okay. And like for that, there are maybe some specs who the 4 citrines that were available on Tuesday were included their ideal layout. And it's like, okay, cool, I'm done. And then there could be a player who none of them are the ones that they wanted. And so you just have to wait. You have to wait 2 more weeks to open your present.
Yeah.
But you know, this player over here, they have what they like.
Yeah.
I think that whole, like, I think there is a good thing about having maybe anticipation around certain rewards or certain power spikes or whatever, because it allows players to work towards it, have some kind of an idea of when to expect it, have some kind of a plan. And there are players who like to have that stuff. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach. But when you're introducing a new item like this that is relatively, I don't want to say time limited, but it's going to be relevant for less time than other similar items might be, right?
Yep.
For a lot of players, because there might be players who don't even get this maxed out and then aren't using it next season or whatever. It's a very short-term item. I don't think there was a lot of real strong a strong case to be made to have time gated the citrine acquisition in the first place. Like, yeah, okay, it's tied to the different invading factions and their story that you want to tell on the island, and I get all that stuff. That I think there's a strong argument to be made that should be separated entirely from item acquisition and character power to begin with.
Yeah.
And that those two things, they can serve similar purposes in terms of making the Siren Isle like a cool space, but they affect players in massively different ways. And so I think they made the correct choice here, for sure. I think it would be better if they could just get out in front of this stuff and like, you know what? If you want us to grind it up and power it up, cool. Let us have all the bells and whistles on it right away. Like, don't make me grind the bells and whistles. Make me think the item is cool as soon as I can get it. Because you know what I did? I initially got all the stuff. I couldn't get the citrines that were good or interesting to me. I just unequipped it. Like, okay, cool. I put it in the bank, I think, even. Like, I'll see it in a couple weeks. And, like, that doesn't feel great, but I didn't really care. Now, I wonder if now, obviously, like, there was a ton of feedback about this, right? People were not happy about this, if you can fathom that. And I don't hold it against any player for feeling bad about it. I think the rollout wasn't great. I think they made just weird choices about how this item got introduced. What I would like to know would be what was really the driving factor in, you know, fast tracking this change. Was it the outcry and all just like the, you know, all the toxicity that has to get hurled across the internet about stuff like this, or was it just that like players weren't using it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you have to like yell and stomp your feet and make a stink about the fact that the item isn't good. Like, you just don't use the item, and then they see that like, hey, we built like a patch around this item and making it cool and giving you cool powers with it, making it customizable, and you put it in your bank so you could use the Signet of Bone from a dungeon from 15 years ago. Maybe we need to do something different about this item. You know, like, what do you think is more effective? To me, I feel like they know everything that we do as players, right? Like, we're on their servers, we're in their databases. They could see that I got the ring, I unequipped it, and I put it away. Like, that's got to be pretty strong behavioral feedback.
Yeah.
So I don't know how important the making the stink is, because they know that we're not using stuff if it's perceived to be not powerful. I mean, if it makes you feel good to put that stuff out there, then I think, you know, hey, whatever, as long as you're not being like, I don't know, threatening or whatever. If you keep it about the game and not about like some kind of personal vendetta or something, it's fair game, I guess. I just don't want to dwell on this stuff, you know, and that's not the kind of energy I'd like to put out into the world. So yeah, I do think it sucks when they, you know, put stuff in and it's like, okay, well, this player benefits from it more than this other player because these other items aren't available yet on this rotating basis and whatever, you know, we're not presenting the maximal amount of player choice in this situation. Yeah, that sucks. I'm just not going to use the item until I can have it the way that I want it to be. And they made that happen. So yeah, it would be cool if the wins would occur before they had the big losses, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, imagine if the last week of PTR for .7 would have been, hey, it's not 24 hours or less before patch launch. It's a week and a half before patch launch. We're buffing the item level. It's going to be higher. Hey, we were going to tie the citrines to the different invading factions, but we realized that that's not as much fun because if you don't want to wait 3 weeks, maybe, if you want particular gems. So we're going to seed all the gems into the experience that you start the new content with. And then like all of the preview media about it, people who do stuff like what we do, people who do stuff in other media would have all that information and be like, hey, actually, this is really cool. There's going to be a lot of power and flexibility here. But instead, you know, with the way PTR ran last week, you and I are sitting here going, I don't know. Is this going to be good? It seems cool, but it doesn't seem powerful enough, and I don't know. And then other people are like, well, having similar conversations, or like, oh, you can't get the optimal jet. We didn't get into the thing about the citrine rotation, which ones were going to be kind of optimal for specs or whatever. So now, and I mean, there's a lot of investment in WoW player media, right? Fan created media across all kinds of different formats. And like, I think making all these changes right at the last minute before people could digest it and cover it and in media, and then making all these other somewhat obvious changes like several days after they shipped it, it's just like people are just going to have sour feelings about this in a way that isn't really necessary, because I think the item is going to be cool and it's going to be nice to have through the end of season 1 and a nice on-ramp to season 2. And it's going to start really feeling good as we get into these weeks where the item level goes up. Everybody can get all their customizations they want now and get their setup the way they want it. That's awesome. And that should be like the sentiment and the feeling and the message that people have about it. And instead, the whole first week has been this nonsense of like, is this thing going to be good? Oh, it's only good if you have this stuff. Oh, I can't get this stuff yet. How do I get this stuff? Why isn't this just good? Blizzard, what are you doing? So maybe next time they can just cut out that part and just, we can have like a PTR kind of wrap up week where everything makes sense for launch, and then people can wrap their brains around it and then go play it. And so we're getting close. In the old days, it might have been 3 weeks or a month and a half until they managed to actually fix this stuff. 3 days is a lot better than that, but still some room to go to stop the own goals.
Exactly. Okay. Notable hotfixes for the week. The Kaz Elgar Safari now awards Waxwick as intended, which is that Candle Confidant pet, only permanent. So definitely glad they fixed that. I got it before it broke, I guess, as far as achievement goes, because I got it a while back because I was like, I love the Candle Confidant and I want the thing as a permanent pet. That's how you got it. They also increased the amount of threat that tanks generate to help smooth out initial snap threat issues and help tanks better keep up with some of the more threatening damaging specs. And I want to say, we still have enhancement shamans ripping threat off of tanks because enhancement shamans are still doing substantially more damage than any other class. All right. As far as
I do think this is a significant change, though.
It is a nice one to see.
They don't specify, but I think the data suggests this around a 17 to 22% amount of threat buff, so somewhere in that neighborhood. That's a lot. And I mean, I have definitely had, especially off the pull, man, I've had issues where it's like, guys, my Thunderclap is only going to do so much, like there's 5 targets in here. Like, I'm sorry you got killed, but you got to give me something, I don't have any cooldowns up. We just did a big pack. I don't have avatar, whatever. So This should help immensely with that. Some of this ties into stuff that we've been talking about just overall in terms of combat pacing and stuff, I think. And they sort of have put more, they slowly turned that threat knob back since about BFA and just made threat a little bit more and more part of the game as time goes on. But then you sort of have these issues where they don't want tanks doing so much damage as like an overall part of the damage pie of the group. That's not their job. Their job is to hold threat and to, direct mobs around the encounter and to receive damage in a doable way. So, okay, without a big threat modifier, you just get outpaced, and you don't want to throttle the DPS because that's no fun. You want DPS killing stuff. So it's I think this is just sort of a natural reaction over time to old changes to threat into kind of the way the combat's working right now. I welcome this. I don't really have any ways to inject significantly more threat into how I'm playing. So I need a little bit of help because I want my DPS to be able to do what they want to do. And especially with, hey man, you get procs or whatever from the ring that do that zap damage and all that stuff. Like give me just enough help to keep stuff stuck to me, especially on a pull, so that my team can do their jobs.
Yep. That's, really what it comes down to when it comes to that sort of stuff. Okay. The dungeons, we did see some dungeon changes, which, and I guess I'll dig more into the Mythic Plus changes a bit later, but they did address an issue with Singing Steel, inflicting more damage than intended inside of Siege of Borealis. There was also a bug with the new scaling to Throne of the Tides and Time Walking that would not allow low-level players to interact with Neptune's cache. So you couldn't get your loot at the end of the dungeon because you were too low a level. So that got fixed. So we're glad to see that, and that came in. They also, players in the WoW 20th anniversary event must now be level 30 to accept the turn-ins for the Celebration Crate quests. Alex will continue to be available to turn crate quests in after the celebration ends this year-round location. So FYI, Alex is still going to exist for turn-ins if that's something you're wanting to do. So be sure that if you are picking up those celebration crates, you can still turn them in. So just don't worry about that. Okay, we also had a big Mythic Plus post that I want to dig into here. So we got a tuning pass, and it says, along with the 11.07 patch this week, we'll be making the following changes to encounters in Mythic Plus dungeons to provide better parity across different specializations and reduce the composition restrictions. In Arakara, we saw that Kikatal, the Harvester, the cultivated poison periodic damage reduced by 10%. That's that last boss. Poison damage massively reduced by 10%. That's great. I definitely felt that in some Arakaras I ran yesterday, so very happy to see that. City of Threads, Orator, Crixvix, as well as Royal Venom Shell both got reduced damage. So the Subjugate Shadows is reduced by 20%, as well as the Venom Spray periodic damage reduced by 25%. So again, some more damage tuning to make sure that folks aren't just getting one shot or it's being a little bit out of control. In Grim Batol, the Twilight Flame Renders Shadow Flame Slash initial damage reduced by 25%, as well as the Lava Fist from the Molten Giants by 21%, and they increased the cooldown on it so that tanks can actually have some sort of mitigation up for Lava Fist, which is wonderful to see because we literally had tanks who just could not actually get enough mitigation without using massive cooldowns to be able to cover what the Molten Giant does on a regular basis. It's weird to have mobs that are trash mobs that are actual puzzles you have to plan multiple pulls in advance to have a cooldown for, so you can be sure that you're not just getting one shot when you get to that boss. Like you shouldn't be going, okay, I have 2 to 3 of these that I need to pull, and I'm going to need to deal with the Lava Fist on each of those, so I need to be sure I'm saving Shield Wall and not using it on the last boss, in the first boss, because if I use it there, then it's on cooldown before the first Molten Giant I hit. So on a boss, I'm choosing not to use a defensive cooldown because a trash mob hits me so hard. That seems weird, so I'm glad that they're addressing that, because the same thing's happening inside Mists of Tyrannosaith with the Mistveil Guardians. We see the Protector of the Mist damage buff reduced by 2% per stack, was 3% previously, because Mistveil Guardians just hit too hard, and they just do. So, and it's the same thing for tanks, so I'm glad to see that happening. So they're putting things where they should be, in my opinion. Irontide Curse Blades, the Curse Slash damage vulnerability reduced to 10% from 15%. In Stone Vault, the Voidbound Despoiler, Shadow Claw cast time increased by 2.5 seconds, up from 1. Shadow Claw cooldown increased. The Cursed Heart Invader, the Void Infection periodic damage reduced by 25%. Master Machinist, their Igneous Hammer damage reduced by 20%. Again, Master Machinist, as a boss, Igneous Hammer was like 90% of a tank's health every time it swung and hit them if they did not have something running, if it didn't just one-shot them. Through, obviously if they had active mitigation, then it would be like 90% of their health. But if they had that plus Last Stand or that plus Shield Wall, then you'd be like, oh, 40 or 50% health. Okay, 20% is what this needed to be nerfed by. I'm very glad to see that. Igneous Hammer damage is big. And so they wrap up by saying these changes are intended to address high damage, frequent cast magical tank attacks, as well as non-magic dispel spells that require significant throughput increases if they cannot be removed. So yes, this is like, hey, this is a poison. Poison hurts a lot. Not all healers can dispel poison, and not every group has a poison dispel in it. Maybe we should reduce the damage on that so that we essentially open up the field to bringing different healers in, as opposed to being like, hey, can you dispel poison? No? Okay, well then you're not in the group. Or hey, can you dispel the curse at the start of Stone Vault? No? Well, sorry, we don't want you. Like, that shouldn't be happening inside of groups. There should be enough dispels to go around for these sorts of abilities, or the damage should be reduced enough you can heal through it, although it's more challenging for folks and they have to plan for it.
Yeah, I mean, so I obviously I like these changes because these are all dungeon nerfs. Every dungeon on this list got easier because of these changes. I think really when I think about these changes in the broader context, one thing we've seen for years now is like, hey, this content's about to come out. We are adjusting player health pools. We're going to make player health pools 15% bigger because we don't like this rubber banding of health bars going from full to empty to full to empty to full to empty. And then they put in these abilities like cultivated poison or like shadow flame slash or whatever. And it's like, well, you have just you bought yourself all that headroom with the the extra stam, and then you just used it all up with ability design and tuning. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times they don't kind of walk the walk when it comes to them wanting to slow down the pace of combat or change up that sort of decision making based gameplay with healing and stuff like that. I'm hoping that these changes kind of indicate that they're cognizant of the way this is starting to feel as we kind of gear up in War Within, and players are playing like high end content where this stuff is super punishing. Because I've said it for a while that combat in general in WoW is too fast. I don't want to go back to vanilla speed content, but there's a middle ground and we could tune it back a little bit. I think having healers and tanks being able to react to these high damage abilities is what I'm looking for. I want to have windows where I can make these decisions, what you mentioned about, not using a defensive in one, like on a boss fight because you want to have it available for
a trash pack.
I actually like that as a tank because I like that degree of decision making, but I also play a warrior and I'm lousy with tools in the toolkit, right? I have all kinds of different stuff I can choose. And I play a style that involves a lot of cooldown reduction. So if I can just squeeze some more throughput in those windows, then I can get that ability cooled down and that feels really good. But not every class has that kind of, warrior has so many tools. It's actually hard to learn what they all do and how to use them in which situations. And when I think of like Lava Fist in Grim Batol and Shadow Flame Slash, like specifically, it's part of what makes Grim Batol a fun dungeon for me is like working around all these different abilities. But I don't, not every tank class has access to all of those tools. So, there's going to be times where you just eat a Lava Fist and it's like, okay, well, what kind of tools do I have to deal with it now, right? And it leaves like a dot and all that. So it's like, okay, do I have a thing that will like reduce the dot once it's on me, or can I reduce the initial hit, or can I maintain with self-healing or sustain once the initial hit comes in and the dot goes on? Like that's all good stuff because that's like the kind of tank gameplay decision making that you want to present to players, right? Can I spell reflect it? If not, can I do something else during the duration of it? I love that stuff. And I definitely noticed, like when you go through these abilities, man, cultivated poison, that was a really bad one. Subjugate hurts really bad, or it hurts 20% less bad than it did. I love it. Shadow Flame Slash and Lava Fist and Shadow Claw. Jeez, dude. These are like the hardest hitting abilities across the dungeon pool stuff. The Igneous Hammer. I was just talking about that last week or the week before because I had that super buffed up Machinists because of the orbs, and then I got hit with an Igneous Hammer that was like plus 60% damage or something. They really I think they came up with a nice slate of abilities that just felt unfair, right? I think dialing the stuff back about 20% feels fair. It's like, okay, I can deal with it now. Even if I don't have the optimal tool for the situation every cast, I have some way to counterplay against it. So I think that's a good, what I hope is that there's maybe a lesson in here, and maybe this is a template for season 2 stuff. There's a degree to which we can test the tank healer kind of duo with abilities, on trash mobs or even on bosses, but there's sort of a threshold we want to be within, because otherwise we kind of hit that sort of like escape velocity where there is no counterplay and it's just raw throughput, baby. Like you're just dumping stuff and hoping for the best. Like we don't want that. And they say they don't want it, but then we always kind of end up back there.
Yeah, we do. So I'm excited to see what they end up choosing to do with it. But in the end, I'm glad that Mythic Plus got the tuning that needed to get. What I mean by excited is I mean season 2. I do think that it is the reset they need, where all of our health pools are going to be increasing because we're going to be getting more item levels. So I'm hoping they're looking at this and going, okay, we did put out that post about what we wanted healing and tanking to feel like this expansion, and we haven't hit that mark. This is our chance to tune things again as we get this soft reset to make season 2 feel different from season 1 and how we might choose to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they choose to do with that. Okay. There is one other post here I want to talk about. And I want to talk about it because Blizzard's asking for feedback, and we're about to go into a holiday season where Blizzard's going to go quiet, and people might have time to play the video game here and there, or at least think about the video game to a certain degree. So they asked for a feedback post on class sets for season 2. And in this post, they list out their conceptual class sets without numbers necessarily in all cases for every spec in the game. And this post starts off, I'm just going to read through the first chunk of it here to sort of give the conceptualization of the idea that they're going for with Season 2. For class sets in Season 2, we're exploring a new direction and would like to give players an early look at them. In The War Within Season 2, class sets will have their 2-piece set bonus design split by role. So healer, tank, range DPS, melee DPS. That'll be your 2-set bonus focused on a role. And their 4-set piece bonus will be split by spec. So the 4-set bonus will be specific to your spec that you're currently playing. We will utilize unique keywords for each role in their 2-piece sets, and then modify how each spec interacts with those keywords in their 4-piece. These keywords will be tied thematically to our upcoming raid, Liberation of Undermine. So, for example, let's look at Elemental Shaman and Augmentation Evoker sets, and the range DPS keyword Jackpot. Okay, so one of the keywords is Jackpot. For an Augmentation Evoker, your damaging spells have a chance to hit a jackpot, causing an upheaval at 100% effectiveness that does not knock enemies up. Casting Breath of the Eons also always hits a jackpot. So basically, there's that bonus, and then we'll read the Elemental Shaman one, which is your spells and abilities have a chance to hit a jackpot that summons a fire elemental for 8 seconds. Casting Ascendance will always hit a jackpot. So there's your jackpot. It's the same thing with Druid. I want to roll Druid in here too because it's similar with Boomkin. Your damaging spells have a chance to hit a jackpot, growing a wild mushroom at a nearby enemy's location at 100% effectiveness. Celestial Alignment or Incarnation, Chosen of Elune always hits a jackpot, right? So they're saying, okay, these range DPS specs will always hit a jackpot if they use one of their big major buttons, but your normal sort of rotation has a chance to hit one too. And it does this effect, right? It has this thing that can happen. Now, for each individual 4-set bonus, it's something that then happens with that, right? But it's more specific to your spec. So the 4-set for Augmentation Evoker is your upheavals, which Jackpot casts an upheaval at 100% effectiveness, remember, so that's your 2-set. So your upheavals have a 100% chance to grant Essence Burst. Eruption casts with Essence Burst deal 25% increased damage. For Elemental Shaman, it's when you summon or extend your Fire Elemental, which, Fire Elemental is summoned for 8 seconds by hitting a jackpot. When you cast Ascendance, it also is guaranteed to cast one. And you have your normal summon Fire Elementals that you can put down if you want to. Your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Lava Burst deal 10% increased damage for 8 seconds. So you get a 10% damage buff to those spells. So choosing where you're choosing to affect that. For Balanced Druids, your Starfall and Star Surge damage against targets affected by your Wild Mushroom, which Jackpot can cast a Wild Mushroom, increases the damage over time effect by 20%. So Starfall and Star Surge damage against targets affected by Wild Mushrooms damage over time effect are increased by 20%. So you do 20% more Starfall damage or Star Surge damage against a target that's affected by Wild Mushroom. So this is one of those neat things, and Wild Mushroom just has a chance to cast on its own if you're taking the talents for it. So Jackpot can do it. You can have the normal proc for it, or you can cast your Incarnation or Celestial Alignment, which always hits a jackpot, which means during your big cooldown, you're doing 20% more damage with Starfall or Star Surge, which is really nice. So that's Jackpot as a keyword that they're sort of looking at. And they've done this with other ones too. The other keywords, as an example, are Luck of the Draw for tanks, Winning Streak for melee DPS, and Insurance for healers. All right. And it's a similar effect with all of those things. Restoration Druid, your healing spells have a chance to apply Insurance to their target that heals them for 15 seconds. Insurance, if consumed, if any ally drops below 40% health, to heal them inside that window. And their 4-set is Life Bloom's Bloom has a 30% chance to apply Insurance to its target for 10 seconds. When Insurance is consumed or removed, it leaves a missing Rejuve, Regrowth, or Wow Growth heal over time effect for 15 seconds on its target. So it's leaving behind a different hot. It'll have the initial heal, it'll leave behind a different hot. Life Bloom has a chance to make it proc, but also just your healing spells have a chance to apply it. So you can see Insurance just sort of spreading around the raid from your healers with doing stuff like that. Jason, you want to talk a bit about the warrior ones while we're doing this, or?
Yeah, the tank ones are
Luck of the Draw.
Luck of the Draw, it's called, and I think they all trigger off of whenever you take damage. So I guess
each time you take damage, you have a chance. Yep.
The question that I have, I guess, is maybe this is like the big question across all of these bonuses.
Sure.
Is like, what is the proc rate, right?
Yeah, what's the real proc per minute? Yeah.
If the proc rate is too high, then this is a problem. But I mean, they haven't really done high proc rate stuff, so I assume it's going to be pretty low. We'll probably be getting like, maybe several RPPMs or something. In Warrior's case, you actually get 4 seconds of shield wall whenever Luck of the Draw procs, which is really nice. That's a pretty hefty passive damage reduction. You also do increased damage reduction, you do increase damage, 15% increased damage for 10 seconds after the Luck of the Draw activation. So you get 4 seconds of shield wall for free, just totally for free, and 15% extra damage for 10 seconds. This just procs from you taking damage, which if you are in a dungeon or if you're the active tank in a raid, you will be taking damage basically at every possible opportunity.
Yep.
The 4-set for Warrior, you get crit strike chance, 50% crit strike chance on Shield Slam, and its crit strikes reduce the cooldown of Shield Charge by 6 seconds. So in a 10-second window, you do have a cooldown on Shield Slam. It does reset based on your various abilities. You might get a handful of Shield Slams in here. If they crit, you get 6-second reduction on Shield Charge. Shield Charge is like a 45-second cooldown, so 6 seconds. It has no other CDR. So even if you get, I feel like if you get super lucky with this or you get super unlucky with this, either way, you're kind of getting some Shield Charge cooldown reduction. Shield Charge is a great ability that does damage and gives you a whole bunch of shield block uptime and generates rage and stuff. It has no minimum range. It's an ability we got in Dragonflight that feels great to push. But it's not sort of like a super rotational part of like, I don't know. I mean, when you're playing Prot Warrior, you're maintaining shield block. You're like spamming your Shield Slam procs. If you're playing Thane, like you're doing your lightning blasts when they proc, and then you're doing your thunderclaps and your revenges, and you got to get your rage into your ignore pain and all that. And I mean, obviously you're wanting to shield charge on cooldown, so that's good.
You're also doing 10%, so you're doing 15% increased damage while having 50% increase critical strike from Shield Slam.
I mean, your Shield Slams are gonna crush, which is fun. I think there's a fun element to that for sure. I think the cool thing is it doesn't seem like a thing we're gonna have to super manage. Like it's just gonna proc and you're just gonna Shield Slam, and that's cool. I don't have any kind of a problem with that. I don't feel like this is like a super great bonus for Prot Warrior, but it's certainly not bad. I'm not upset about it.
Well,
the problem with Prot Warrior, we got other stuff to we'll get into it more next week when we talk about the build notes, because there are some changes on the horizon in Prot Warrior land that are it's a bit hard to contextualize at the moment. But I mean, basically the idea here for the set bonus, and I mean, just looking at the other tank bonuses too, like they're kind of in a similar vein of, okay, the two piece procs off of taking damage, and then you get your big DR for 4 seconds, and luck of the draw means you do 15% extra damage. And but then the 4 set has some different effects. It might be throughput related, it might just be like raw damage output related.
Well, it's all based around spec, right? So depending on
the different specs have like wildly different abilities during luck of the draw, which is cool. Really, there is a weird thing that I want to just kind of address with this, because I think some people saw this and the way they kind of put it out there this week and went, first of all, these bonuses are too boring and they suck and I hate them. And also the devs are lazy because we're not getting as many bonuses as we should be getting, because they don't want to do the work, and so it's just easier to give everybody the same bonuses. And like that's the typical like knee-jerk WoW audience reaction to everything. I feel like this really is kind of what they do every time out. They just don't usually tie it together with keywords that are the same. Like, look at the bonuses across the roles in the current pool. Like it's not like we're coming from a place where every spec has these beautiful and custom bespoke, like wonderful bonuses that are so intricate and only could apply to them. And now we're moving to a world where everybody has the same thing. It's like they already do this. They already do these very similar kind of trigger conditions, and then they have like modifications to these same type of ability. The abilities have sort of a one-to-one relationship across classes. This is your big DR, this is your big throughput cooldown, whatever. Like, I think this is totally in line with the philosophy around set bonuses that we've seen in recent years. And the fact that they're just using the same keywords to tie it together, what I hope, I guess, is that what we end up finding out is inside the raid, there's some kind of like bonus across roles when a luck of the draw proc happens or a jackpot happens or something.
For
right?
all we know, there's going to be trinkets that essentially activate it. There could be a trinket.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, right? There's other stuff tied into the keywords.
Of you put the on use on this trinket of you use this and you gain a luck of the draw immediately. That's on a 1.5 cooldown, whatever it is. There could be one that's, hey, you have a chance, essentially to have this, or this happen, but those 3 things, one of them could be that it procs your insurance for a healer. Like we don't know necessarily what the loot table is going to look like, but why I wanted to put this post here, right, isn't so that me and you could discuss the finites of an individual spec or class choice for a 2-piece or a 4-piece and go through it and break it down and whatever it was. It was to be informative to our audience of, hey, this post exists. Blizzard is asking for your feedback about these set bonuses and this concept and what you think about it. Go out and voice your opinion on this post that you can find inside the show notes.
In there. Yeah.
They're all in there in this post. So go and actually be vocal in the post about how you feel about the concept of it, your particular bonuses. Maybe it's not affecting the spell that you want it to affect. Maybe shield charge just isn't that interesting and you'd rather have it affect Avatar or whatever it is instead, as far as reducing the cooldown on things. Like, be vocal about it. Let that be something that you are expressing for this post. All of the set bonuses are there, so you can go in and look at whatever it is you want to do and dig into it. But the concept right now is each of those roles, tanking, healing, range DPS, melee DPS, have a keyword associated with their 2-piece bonus. And that keyword will activate based off of something that makes sense for your class, whether it's casting spells or taking damage or whatever it is. And the 4-piece bonus is going to be based upon the particular spec you're playing. And that is one that is going to be essentially enhanced by when that keyword happens, or an enhanced way to activate that keyword, which I think is great. In my opinion, I love this direction in the sense of this is something totally new. And I recognize what Jason's saying, but this is a totally new thing for them to come out, tie things to keywords, make it really obvious how it works. And by doing this, they can incorporate loot that then activates, if they want, keywords, which I think is also exciting, or potions and flasks. They can do all sorts of stuff that activate keywords. They can have an enchant that has a random chance to activate it. Like any of those things could happen.
Yeah.
They could put a Citrine note for the ring that goes, hey, you have a chance to activate this effect on someone else's character inside your group when you do something. They can do all those things because they have the keywords that exist there. And that's exciting to me. Like it opens a whole other door from what they previously did. Yes, their design philosophy, I think, is similar in line with what they've done for other tier sets. But I like the idea of having these keywords because as soon as you have that, you've now communicated to the player base, this is how this system is going to work. And now we can actually activate that with other items because you know the system and how it works. Like when they say jackpot, we're going to know what that means. When they say winning streak, we're going to know what that means as far as these bonuses go for people. So that's exciting to me as far as the doors that this could potentially open for what they could choose to do with it. So I in general like the concept. And I think, yes, there could be some tweaks done to the set bonuses, but I love that they're getting out ahead of this. They're getting it out before the holidays and going, all right, we'll come back after the holidays and hopefully have an abundance of feedback to sift through that will then allow us to put out a really good product. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. They put all the bonuses out like immediately, you know, all this stuff ended up in blue text like the day that they were ready to go up with the notes. I think it was the same day.
Yep.
I don't know. I kind of just, it was a separate post from the dev notes, but still like it was up on the forums. Like here's every single bonus as it currently exists for every spec. I do think that's the way to go. Just get this stuff out in front of people. And I mean, I think if you read like the headline about what they were doing, like the negative reaction to it was not a surprise to me because it just wasn't a good way to sell the concept and it was a little confusing. But when you look at them, like just because they have the same keyword, they don't behave the same. It's not a generic thing across the board, and it's not going to play the same across different. I mean, obviously the different classes, the different spells, whatever. And I mean, maybe it's not a season 2 thing, but if the idea here is, listen, if we get these keyword hooks into these set bonuses, then the opportunity exists. Maybe it's season 2, maybe it's down the road if they continue with this concept where it ties into, you know, like you said, other items or, you know, raid drops or consumables or stuff like that. I mean, I think that could kind of really expand the concept of what a set bonus even is or can do or be or how a raid group can interact with it, which I think is awesome. Like a flat, like you do more damage because these pieces fit together. That's cool, but you know, I think there's so much space there.
Like, what if hitting heroism activated all of these at the same time? Right? Like, that's the type of thing they could do. They could have it so when you press the heroism button inside a raid group, all of these abilities activate, all those keywords activate immediately. That would be crazy.
Right. Or like you could have like a raid trinket. I mean, we were talking about, you were just talking earlier in the show about the trinkets from Anathria, right? Where you had like the group, like what if you had trinkets that like, when another player's, you know, keyword procs, then you get some effect or it procs your keyword or whatever. Yeah. And then so like the healers are all kind of synergistically procking each other's insurance or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is too new and narrow of a concept for this to make it into Undermined, but maybe it does. Maybe this is the plan for season 2, and maybe it's all part of this larger thing. Yeah. If not, I think like it's going to be inevitable if, you know, as they move forward with this concept where they're going to go, okay, well, like we have this keyword and players know what it means and how to take advantage of it. So how else do we expand on it? I think that's a great place to move into with set bonuses. I mean, it's got to be hard to come up with set bonuses every tier, every set. Yeah. There's a reason why they stopped doing them for a while, I think. I think they were just kind of out of juice in terms of how to make them look cool, how to make them play cool. And I think that continues to probably be a challenge. I don't think they need to be mind-blowing in terms of complexity or how they mix up your gameplay. I think players just want to feel like, okay, I've completed the set and now I have a cool bonus for this season. But if you could make it more of a cooperative thing or like across a group, or if you can expand on this keyword concept in the future, like I think that could really revitalize set bonuses, you know, make them feel less like this thing you need to have just so you're optimal and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and make them really feel like a bonus where your group is getting something cool because these items work together like that. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, man, that's a heck of an episode. We're gonna start tying things down here, but before I do, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. And today I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much, as well as thank you to all of our patrons, past and present, who have donated or do donate towards keeping the show running every week, and episodes being hosted and the archives online and more people finding it and all those fun things that really sort of keep the show alive. And if you're trying to find our Patreon, you can find it over at patreon.com/thestartingzone, or go to thestartingzone.com and click on the Patreon link. And I want to give a special shout out to Zachary N this week, who's our newest patron who hopped in there to support the show. So thank you so much, Zach, for helping us out. And I hope you're, having a good holidays.
Absolutely. Yes. Zachary, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Thank you for the support. And thank you to all patrons for as long as we've been running this program. It's helped out immensely and kept the show on track and kept it online for you. So if you've ever enjoyed an episode of TSZ in the last 7.5 years since we started Patreon, thank a patron, because they made it possible. So thank you all. And yes, happy Wintervale to everybody. I hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy some WoW over the holiday season. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy. I gotta get some circlets on some alts. That's what I'm going to be looking to do over the holidays, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time for sure. All right. If another way to support the show, if you haven't checked it out already, is your iTunes, your Apple Podcast. Leave us those 5-star reviews. They really help us out and help more people find the show. And we are working on a solution for our international listeners who leave us reviews, so we'll be being sure to get a solution up for that, where we can get your reviews as well, clearly, since our old way shut down. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 663 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for the episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show or leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can go to Blue Sky at The Starting Zone, or you can go to our Discord and join our Discord server. Go to thestartingzone.com/Discord, and that'll take you over to our Discord server. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone, and check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you around the interwebs these days?
You can find me over on Twitter at Shieldwald, and you can find me on Blue Sky at JLucas. So come say hi over there. I mostly just post stuff to Blue Sky these days. Twitter is more of a thing that I read, so I guess keep that in mind. You can find video channels over at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Been pretty quiet, but I did do the big old Wintervale giveaway stream I was talking about yesterday, which was super fun. So thanks to everybody who hung out and participated. Gave away a ton of stuff yesterday. I think I had 7 pets to give away. I think I ended up giving away 12 motorcycle mounts or something. So it was super fun hanging out for a few hours and doing WoW Trivial Pursuit questions and just whatever, just celebrating the end of the year, doing Wintervale, whatever, and tossing stuff out. So thanks everybody who hung out, and enjoy your Wintervale presents from Great Father Winter's magical spreadsheet.
Indeed. All right. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, over on Blue Sky at SpencerHD.bluesky.social. On Twitch, twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or over on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, I want to say happy holidays. Thanks for listening, and jobs done.